You know, this issue has been going on of income disparity, the sort of socioeconomic cultural wars, probably since the 49er days when the magnates of gold and silver were building these huge mansions amidst a lot of poverty. But more contemporary times, I'd say I remember as a reporter back in the 70s when gentrification, I think, became a word, where people were worried that wealthier people were moving into their neighborhoods and throwing them out.
Right.
This has been happening and happening and happening.
And it's not just San Francisco.
Well, it's certainly not just San Francisco.
Cities, you know, with burgeoning industry, you know, around the world.
Well, around the world. You know, I was a foreign correspondent for 10 years, and you see that in Central and South America and in Asia and everywhere. But
of late, the tech industry has really boomed in San Francisco. You're seeing companies like Salesforce, Twitter, Square, take out huge, you know, corporate office spaces, and yes, they are revitalizing. You live here. I live here too. They are revitalizing certain neighborhoods, but at the same time, they're driving up real estate prices, and, you know, obviously some people are happy about that, and some people are pretty pissed.
Well, I think the pissed factor is apparently not quite high enough, with all due respect to the sort of people who've been screaming and yelling at buses. Is not high enough. I mean, no one's been guillotined that I know of in probably 150 years. So you have this war where it's kind of like they're chest to chest, kind of bumping in chests against each other, but nothing's really happening. I think this thing that we're talking about, which is the charging of these shuttle companies, who will then, of course, pass it on to the tech companies they work for, who can afford it. I think it's $1 a day. Per stop.
Do you know the cost? Because we haven't been able to figure out exactly how much they're going to have to pay.
They're not allowed, because of city bureaucracy. Of course, you cannot make a profit because it's government, and government never makes a profit. But the cost is estimated at $1.5 million. But if you do the math on the cost that they said these companies were going to incur, it's more like $8 million. So maybe there's $6.5 million there for somebody to play with to make income equality a reality in San Francisco. The problem with this, really, Emily, is that you know, there were a couple of quotes. First of all, David Hsu, president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, he's saying, in recent years, we've seen wild, wild west in our streets. I mean, come on. Has he ever been to Manhattan? You know, San Francisco streets, you live here, they're not wild, wild west.
You're calling out New York City.
I'm calling out New York City. But the fact is that, you know, then there'll be a bust, as there inevitably will be. I mean, I'm not predicting anything. I'm not an economist. But that's what happens.
Do you think it's all going to go
Well, it goes up and down. And I do think that there's sort of an inexorable push of people, particularly low-income, disadvantaged communities, out of San Francisco to different parts of San Francisco. I mean, Hunters Point, I remember when Willie Brown, the famous mayor of San Francisco, first ran for mayor, he basically had never been to Hunters Point. So there are places in San Francisco that are still struggling, where people can still find places to live, but they're getting pushed that way.
What about, though, it's not just, you know, sort of the lowest income, you know, the people in the lowest income bracket that are complaining, you know, people, you know, middle-class people trying to find an apartment in San Francisco can't find one. There's not enough housing for people. It's so expensive. The housing, especially around the bus stops where these, you know, tech buses pick up from, is especially inflated.
Well, I mean, housing costs up 26%, I think I saw, between 2011 and 2012. So there's no question about it. Where I used to work at the Chronicle, you know, we had a corner bar where we used to eat, and there were literally cockroaches on the table. And within a few years, suddenly you have Blue Bottle coffee shops. Is it called Blue Bottle? I think
it's called Blue Bottle.
Blue Bottle, where you know, a coffee is what, $28, $29, $30. I don't know how much it is. There are lines around the block. I mean, it's a change of culture. It's a shift. It's a conflict of culture.
You know, what about the sort of sudden wealth aspect of this that more recently you've seen tech companies, tech founders making exits at gigantic valuations, gigantic multiples, and you have, which is a phenomenon that I don't believe you've seen in the last 30 years.
So if you are, but there was a story, I may have heard it on Bloomberg, about end-of-year bonuses for 2013 were pretty good for people in the financial services industry, and that there was a trickle-down effect to artisans and others who sell goods and services to these people. I think there's a question as to whether there's a trickle-down effect. You know, in the 70s and 80s, Japan Airlines would fly Japanese tourists in there and connect with Japanese-owned tourist shops and hotels and give them a credit card so they would not actually spend a single dime that would stay in San Francisco. I don't think we're seeing anything like that. I think that there probably is an effect. People do take advantage and can take advantage of the fact that there are wealthy people here who are spreading their money around a little bit. The buses is really it's just a silly symbol.